WWE Day of Reckoning 2 is the last wrestling game that Yuke's made for the GameCube. It was released in 2005, which was pretty late in the system's life cycle. Nintendo would be shifting focus to the Wii pretty soon after this. A part of me wants to look at the Wii just to see what the wrestling games on that system were like, but at the same time, I don't really have the time to do that right now. After this, I'll be switching over to the PS2 games, and I'm also still waiting for a copy on WrestleMania 19 for the GameCube, so there's going to be a little bit of overlap between these two systems. It will be interesting to see what the differences between just the two versions of games that appear on both systems are going to be. After playing Day of Reckoning, I was really looking forward to this one, and I hope that the story mode is better and that some of the problems have been fixed, so we'll just see what this game has to offer. The story mode was improved from the first game, which is great. I liked that the first game had a story mode, but it was still fairly basic and linear. In the second game, there's a little bit more choice that you have, so you have some more control over the direction that you want to go in. The story picks up from where the first game left off. The character from the first game has to regain the World Championship that they lost sometime between the end of Day of Reckoning and the beginning of Day of Reckoning 2. One thing that I was kind of confused by, and I'm sure I either just missed it or maybe it wasn't something I was able to do anyway, I didn't see a chance to bring my save data from the first game into this one, so I could use my generic character from the first game and continue the story in the second game. If there is an option, please let me know in the comments below, but I couldn't see it when I was going through this. It is nice that they continued the story from the first game. The storyline did conclude in that one. It was kind of fun, and it feels like you're continuing a pro wrestling storyline. Something like, you made it to the top, you eventually got screwed for the title, and now you need to try to fight back and win it again. It's kind of cool. I like the fact that that's in here, and the storyline's done pretty well. The gameplay is largely unchanged from the previous game. Some things were tightened up a bit, and I think the AI is a little bit better than last time. It's not really saying a lot, but it is a little bit better. It's still it isn't great, but it is what I've come to expect from a lot of retro wrestling games at this point. They just have computer opponents that are pretty hit and miss. They're either oblivious to what's going on, or they're just way too good at it. The control scheme is quite good. I like how simplistic it was at first, and then as you get more into the game, it gets a little bit more complex. The reversal and counter system is very good. The one thing that felt a little bit off is how quickly your stamina drained in the story mode, but I'm guessing that's all to do with the fact that you're playing a essentially new character and you need to level up your stats and whatnot. It still felt pretty annoying that it took me forever to get up off the mat, but that's just something that'll change as I go through the game. This still feels a lot like a party game, which is something that I said about the previous GameCube wrestling games. Day of Reckoning 2, it's a little bit different because the story mode is a little better, and I enjoyed playing that more than the previous game. The exhibition matches were a lot of fun. They were fun in the previous game, they're still fun here. I do like the hold counter system. It was a little like a guessing game at first on just what your opponent was going to select. I thought it was a little awkward when I first saw those things pop up where you need to switch over to the camera stick and kind of just select up, down, left, or right. It took a little bit of time, but I do kind of like that. It was a little bit of an adjustment for me just because I don't play the GameCube that often. It's still a pretty cool concept, though. Overall, I like the gameplay a little bit better than the first game. Yuke's didn't need to change a whole lot, but they did change some things for the better. I don't think anything got worse in this game from the previous one. I didn't like, all of the changes at first, but as I played this more, they kind of grew on me, which is always a good thing. At this point in time, Day of Reckoning 2 is the best looking wrestling game that I have played so far. Granted, I still have to play the PS2 games, and I'm assuming that they'll be as good, if not a little bit better than this one. So the character models in this look a lot better than the previous game, the animations seem a little bit smoother, and the game's presentation is better than Day of Reckoning. The graphics in the arena were significantly improved over the last game, just from what I was looking at. I think the character entrances are a little bit better, the character models, especially their faces, look a little bit better. Everything just looks like they put a lot of time and effort into making this game more, visually appealing than the previous game. Yuke's added more details to these character models. Each wrestler looks very good, and I liked that they added just some little things to it, and, they didn't go over the top with trying to make them a lot better. They just improved what they needed to. The graphics didn't get in the way of the gameplay, which is always a good thing. This is something that I always look for because I don't want to see the camera mess up and the screen, just really screw me over. What is really cool is how the game gets like a little bit cinematic with some of these moves. I know other wrestling games have done that as well, but I really like this touch. I liked it in the SmackDown games. I liked it in the previous game. It's just something that I think is really cool when all of a sudden the camera will spin around. You'll get more close-ups at what's going on. It just looks really cool. WWE Day of Reckoning 2 still looks pretty good today, which gives me some hope for, the PS2 games that I'm going to be looking at, and also the last GameCube game I need to check out. The GameCube games have all looked wonderful so far. Well, one or two had art styles that, I didn't like as much. I don't think any of them really looked bad. They've all been really good looking. Looking over the review scores for this was pretty surprising. I wasn't really expecting to see some of them. What I thought I was going to get were a bunch of review scores in the mid to high 8s. But there were several reviewers who just flat out hated this game. And because I was curious, I had to double check on what they did on the previous game just to see if, they were at least being consistent. Which they were, and I found that odd. This time I looked at 4 publications, EGM, IGN, GameSpot, and Game Revolution. EGM's review was pretty wild. 3 people reviewed the game. Their aggregate score was a 5.83 out of 10. This was really shocking. This was getting to the point where a 5 was no longer average, it was considered bad. 2 of the reviewers gave the game 5 out of 10. The third gave it a 7.5 out of 10. It was weird. It was like reading 2 reviews from people who had never played a wrestling game before, or had only played 2 wrestling games and liked the other one better than Day of Reckoning 2. I went back to check and just see what they said about Day of Reckoning, and they hated that one as well. The biggest complaint they had was the AI and trying to win a tag team match. Having played a lot of wrestling games over the years, I can say, this has always been a problem with tag team wrestling matches in, pro wrestling games. It's always been a pain in the ass. And I don't really get how that one match type would knock a score down to a 5 from, say a 7 or an 8. It just felt really weird going through EGM's reviews and seeing that. So, Wikipedia says that Game Revolution gave this game a C. In reality, I have no idea what score they gave the game. There is a 4 at the bottom of the review, but I don't know if that's a 4 out of 10 or a 4 out of 5. The reviewers said the gameplay received minor upgrades and the graphics were significantly improved. They also complained about the AI, but they said that it was better than the previous game. I'm not entirely sure how all of that turned into a C, and I don't know what the 4 meant. So that review was odd, but they seemed to at least like the game more than EGM did. GameSpot gave the game an 8.1 out of 10. The reviewer highlighted the improvements over the first game. They brought up the improved graphics and story mode, and it was also brought up that this game wasn't a huge leap forward, which probably kept it from being great. IGN gave the game an 8.5 out of 10. They called it the best wrestling game on the GameCube, and mostly praised the game. Some of the problems they brought up were an inability to import your character from the previous game. They seemed to like everything else about Day of Reckoning 2, and now that I did look that one up and saw this review, I was like, oh, okay, so I can't continue the storyline for my generic guy from the first game into this one. But still, feel free to tell me in the comments about that. It was surprising to see the differing opinions of this game and what Yuke's did to improve it over the first. A few of the complaints, specifically those in the EGM reviews, they were a little confusing to me, and it felt like everyone thought this was an upgrade from the first game, even if the scores didn't necessarily reflect that. So this is the best wrestling game that I played for the GameCube. It's better than the first Day of Reckoning, and it's better than the one WrestleMania game that I played. I'm assuming it's probably better than both of them, but I have not played both of the WrestleMania games. I like that Yuke's has just improved their game as they've gone through this, so they have a basic formula that they introduced in WrestleMania 18, and they kept tweaking it and making it better in their subsequent 3 games. And that's kind of cool to see. The reviews for this game were strange. There were a few publications that just flat out hated it, and I wondered why, the editors had assigned this game to those reviewers, because clearly they didn't like wrestling games, but they were still reviewing it anyway, and that just felt odd to me. So this was the last wrestling game made for the GameCube that I'm aware of, and I think it's a pretty good one to go out on. From here, they would just switch over to working on the PS2 and also on the Xbox, and then move on to the next generation of video games, or video game consoles. So yeah, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and have a great day, everybody.